Air India Flight AI 171's preliminary investigation report has revealed details that have stirred up a fresh mystery in aviation. Seconds before the crash, someone shifted both engine fuel switches from run to cut off. But who did it? As soon as the fuel got cut off and the engines began choking, one of the pilots asked, "Why did you cut off the fuel?" To which the other replied, "I didn't." Now the question is, why were both fuel switches turned off at such a sensitive moment during takeoff? Was there a fault in the switch? Did a pilot do it intentionally, or was it a technical malfunction? And how does this compare with past crashes where pilots committed suicide? Let's dive deep and try to understand what really happened. Welcome back to another detailed episode on Zim Voice. Viewers, it was the morning of June 12th, 2025 at Ahmedabad International Airport. The skies were clear with a slight hint of summer warmth in the air. Jets were either boarding passengers at gates or in taxi mode, lining up one after the other. Runway 23 was handling takeoffs and landings every 5 minutes. In this routine chaos stood an Air India Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, its tail number VTNB, flight number AI 171. This same aircraft had arrived from Delhi just 2 hours earlier, operating as AI 423. Now it was fully fueled, checked, and set to fly from Ahmedabad to London. No one had a clue that this Dreamliner was about to make global headlines and leave behind one of the biggest unsolved aviation puzzles. In the cockpit sat 56-year-old Captain Sumit Sabharwal. He had logged over 15,600 flight hours, of which 8,200 were specifically on the Boeing 787. His co-pilot or first officer was 32-year-old Clive Kundra, who had 3,400 hours of flight experience, with 1,128 of those on the 787. Both pilots passed their breath analyzer tests 1.5 hours before departure. Everything about them was cleared for flight. That same aircraft had a minor technical glitch during the previous flight from Delhi, but the maintenance team fixed it without issue. On board AI 171 were 230 passengers. According to the report, 54,200 kilograms of fuel had been loaded, and the takeoff weight was 213,400 kg, well within normal limits for this aircraft model. No evidence of dangerous cargo was found. Everything was routine. At 1:13 p.m., the cockpit requested pushback and startup clearance from ATC. At 1:33 p.m. and 45 seconds, they were instructed to line up on runway 23. Winds were light at 6 knots, about 11 kilometers per h, and visibility was 6,000 meters, perfect conditions. Co-pilot Clive Kundra was handling takeoff, with Captain Sumit monitoring. Flight recorder data shows that by 1 hour 38 minutes and 33 seconds p.m., the aircraft had reached V1 speed, 153 knots or 283 kilometers per h. This is the point of no return. After this, aborting takeoff is not an option. 2 seconds later, it reached VR speed at 155 knots, and at 1 hour 38 minutes and 39 seconds, it lifted off the runway. Everything was smooth. Even CCTV footage confirms that liftoff was clean. But what happened next flipped everything upside down. Just 3 seconds after liftoff, The aircraft reached 180 knots. So clearly, engines were still producing thrust. Force and E. But right after that, the fuel switches for both engines were flipped, one after the other, with just a 1-second gap. Fuel supply to both engines was cut. Their N1 and N2 values dropped rapidly, meaning the engines began losing thrust fast. Cockpit voice recordings captured one pilot asking, "Why did you shut the fuel off?" The other answered, "I didn't." Investigators still don't know who asked and who answered. CCTV showed the ram air turbine, or RAT, deploying immediately after takeoff. RATs are emergency power sources that activate when the engines fail. Now, that confirmed something was seriously wrong. Flight data confirmed the aircraft was losing altitude fast, and both engines were spinning below minimum idle speed. At 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 5 seconds p.m., ATC received a Mayday distress call. They asked for the flight's call sign, but no response came. Moments later, they saw the plane crash just outside the airport boundary. It first struck the chimney of an Army Medical Corps building, then hit the BJ Medical College hostel. Wreckage was scattered across an area 1,000 feet long and 400 feet wide. All 12 crew members and 229 passengers lost their lives. 19 people on the ground were also killed. Only one passenger survived, by sheer luck, because he was seated right next to an emergency exit. The 15-page preliminary report leaves nothing vague. Debris showed the flap handle was set to 5 degrees, which is standard for takeoff, and the EAFR data matched this. The landing gear lever was down. The thrust levers were burned, but still in forward position. Most importantly, the fuel switches were back in the run position, meaning the pilots had tried to restore fuel supply before impact. These switches have a locking mechanism specifically to prevent accidental use. To move them, you need both hands, one to push the lock, another to pull the switch. So it's physically impossible to do it by mistake or with one hand. If both pilots claim they didn't touch the switches, who did? And how did they get flipped, 1 second apart? Investigators say the delay between fuel cutoff and reactivation was 10 seconds for engine 1 and 14 seconds for engine 2. By then, the engines had just started producing thrust again, but it was too late. Now here's the real puzzle. Everything was fine. Engines, fuel, weather, crew, flight systems. Even the fuel tankers that refueled the plane were checked. Nothing wrong. So, why would the fuel switches be turned off in the first place? The report mentions a 2018 FAA bulletin. Technically just an advisory, not a mandatory order. It warned of potential failures in the fuel switch locking system, particularly on Boeing 737S, due to faulty part installations, and the same locking system with part number 4 Terralitas 8373D is used in various Boeing models, including the one on AI 171. Air India had skipped this inspection since it wasn't compulsory. Even if we assume the locks failed, how likely is it that both switches turned off, one after another, within a second? And if a pilot did it on purpose, we're looking at potential suicide. History gives us similar incidents. In 2015, a German Wings co-pilot locked the captain out and crashed the plane into the Alps. His mental health was unstable. In 2013, a Mozambican captain set the autopilot to 0 altitude while the co-pilot was out. In 1999, Egypt Air 990's co-pilot repeated religious phrases, and dove the aircraft. And in 1997, Silk Air Flight 185's captain shut off both the voice and flight recorders before crashing the plane. In most of these cases, one thing was common: no response to ATC. But AI-171 doesn't fit that pattern. The pilot re-engaged the fuel switches, responded with a mayday, and even tried to pull the nose up. Flight data confirms this. If it were a suicide attempt, why try to recover? That's the real question. Now it's your turn. What do you think really happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and share this video from Zim Voice. We'll see you again in the next one.